Live?
Let's do this.
All right.
Now or never, right?
That's right. It's happening. We are live. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 10 of Maker That Money. I am Pooch, aka Repkord, on all the things. And to my right here,
I'm Andrew, 3D Gloop.
he took his cue right on time, right on cue, buddy. Good to see you. Shout out everybody. Good to see Chris Perillo. Hey, what's up, buddy? Yes, no, we're not on Twitch, but maybe for a different stream. We wanted this to be conversationally focused. Uh, just for those of you who are new to this, the concept is we're both small business owners, got our start as makers, and we're just glad to have you along for our journey here. We just kind of want to share our thoughts and stuff. This started as just a series of phone calls between Andrew and myself, and it's kind of evolved into like, well, if we're going to be talking anyway, like why not
Might
share
as
it with
well open it
others?
up, right?
Maybe there's some interesting nuggets in there, right? That people, but and maybe not. But at the very least, we're having a lot of fun with it. I find it really rewarding, just kind of having the conversation, finding kindred spirits in Andrew and other entrepreneur maker entrepreneurs out there. And our format is such that we kind of pick a topic and we talk about it. We usually go about an hour. And then toward the end, if anybody is interested, has questions or comments, we do have a call in link. This is actually our first time away from Twitter Spaces. And while we really loved the simplicity of Twitter Spaces, we wanted to kind of evolve and go a little bit further. And so we moved over to the YouTube so that we could one, have the chat interface and stuff like that too. But also, we just weren't getting what the reliability with the system that we had hoped. And we'd love this to be a little bit more podcast friendly too moving forward. So we got some
hmm
better pro audio set up. We're recording this, and we will actually. I know I've been saying it, but we're actually going to post it as a true podcast for those that want to listen back and stuff. So I know that everybody has their different means of how they want to consume content, and we want to be as accessible to everybody as we can. So that's the spiel on the show. Uh, yeah, like what? Anyway, let's dive in. But really quick before we get today's subject, today's topic is when to quit your day job, and that's obviously a little clickbaity. We
Yep.
say that it's really about taking the leap, right?
Yep.
Like a lot of people kind of have some side hustles. Maybe maybe you're into 3D printing. Maybe you've started an Etsy store and stuff like that. But you're not bringing in the revenue just quite yet, where you're feeling comfortable with uh
hmm
with with really diving in, yeah.
Yep.
And so we're going to share some thoughts on what worked for us, what didn't work for us, and see how that goes. But before we dive in fully, I want to give you an opportunity, Andrew, to share what's going on this week with you guys. Any wins to report? We always like to share wins on the
Oh
business.
yeah. Yeah, I mean things are great. We're constantly pushing forward. Working on some really cool things. Gearing up for Murph, right? Murph's a little
Yeah.
bit of ways away still, but hey, it's on our radar now, and we've hopefully got some cool things to launch at Murph, and it should be a good fun time if I don't pull my hair out.
Yeah, right. Right?
Yep.
I got my Murph mug here. You don't see it because it's in green and it gets screened out. But I'm really excited, man. I missed last year. A lot of people did, obviously. But for those that are listening in and don't know what Murph is, that's the Midwest Rep Rap Festival. It's kind of a mecca of sorts for 3D printing.
Absolutely.
Tell people where it is and what your impression of Murph
Man,
is.
it's in a small town in the middle of Indiana, right? Or I guess northern Indiana, Goshen. Kinda
Goshen,
kinda
Indiana.
yeah, kinda nowhere, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully you know what Murph is. If you don't, it's where all of these awesome 3D printer, just companies and people interested in 3D printing go to hang out.
Yeah.
for a weekend. It's just a load of fun.
It really is. I highly recommend it if you're into 3D printing and you have the means to make the journey. It is a bit of a journey for me. I always end up flying into Chicago and then driving, but it's a 2 hour drive. It seems like it's going to be a bit of a drive no matter where the major metro you fly
Hmm.
into is. But that's part of the fun of it, right? And
Absolutely.
the experience is just awesome because it's it's a giant show and tell of 3D print. Some people are showing off printers of their own design. Some people are showing off
Hmm.
things that they have printed, and so it's really whatever people want it to be in a lot of regards. And
Yep.
it's grown tremendously over the years, and so hopefully this is a good comeback year as people are coming back out into the wild and going back to shows and stuff. So we'll both be there. Uh,
Yes.
there's
It's
an announcement for you guys, and if you let us know in the chat if you're planning on being there too. We hope to see you. If you can't make that, there's also the East Coast Rep Rap Festival, which is also a lot of fun. That's later in the year. I think it's going to be October this year.
something like that. Hmm.
That's in Maryland, which is a little bit more accessible for our European friends, which is nice.
Hmm.
And then obviously there's any number of other events and stuff like that. I'm actually hoping to get a Europe trip in maybe in the summer. Go to the
Ooh.
UK, maybe even back to Prague again, which would be
Oh, there you
amazing.
go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Shout out 3D Musketeers. Grant, good to see you. Map Laboratories in the house. Awesome. Love having you guys. Winslow Joy. Hey, it's two of the vendors I patronize. We appreciate all your patronage, guys.
Yes.
We wouldn't be here were it not for you guys. So thank you
Hmm.
so much for that. All right. Without further ado, let's give the people what they want, Andrew. Let's
Yep.
talk about quitting your day job. Uh,
Yes.
why don't you give us a quick backstory on like what it was? And I know you've had a number of different
Oh
ventures
yeah.
and stuff like that too. When was the last time you had and when I say day job, guys, I mean like where you're working for somebody else, you're all that
Hmm.
stuff. Like we all have day job. Like I still have a day job. It's just my company, and Andrew has a day
Yep.
job as well. This is really, like I said, more about taking that leap on your something that might have been a side hustle, and
Hmm.
then you said like I'm ready. Like
Yep.
what was it for you? What were the indicators?
So yeah, let's start with a little history. My you know, it's been a minute since I've worked for someone else. And it's an incredibly, I guess, warm feeling inside knowing that it's like, hey, most of my life now I've been kind of doing my own thing. So it's really cool and empowering to a degree.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's see. Rewind the clock back to when I was about 18 years old. I was in college. I had been in college for I'd say about 2 years. I had graduated high school early. Was doing all of the fun fast track stuff, right?
Okay.
And I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. So I was doing mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer engineering, just bouncing around, right? And it was then where I started exploring my own potential, I would call it, just tinkering, making, doing cool stuff in my garage,
Yeah.
or rather my friend's garage. I lived with him.
The Garage
And
Warrior.
yeah, yeah, and so eventually what ended up happening is I developed something that was pretty cool, brought it to professors like, hey, this is really interesting, you should go and write a thesis on this and like go through this normal academia, right, sort of process. And I said, well, maybe I don't want to do that, maybe I want to commercialize it. And so I started talking around to people, kind of in the startup ecosystem. And it looked like I really had something, was onto something. And within, I think, a couple months, I ended up raising $150,000 as a seed investment. And I was like, okay, this is cool. This is exciting. So while it wasn't a day job per se, right, I was going through the normal education route. That was essentially my day job.
Mm.
And I just, at that point, I was, young, naive. I was like, all right, time to do it. I'm going. I quit cold turkey and just ran. And for me, I guess it was I had a safety net in that I was able to raise some capital, right?
Sure.
But for me, it was more so about being able to devote my entire, energy level into what I wanted to do. And that was more important than, continuing my education in that regard. And
So does that
in
make
many
you a
ways,
dropout?
it does.
Look at you, you're a cliche, my friend.
Yep. But yeah, so it was one of those things where it was like, hey, I have this opportunity in front of me. I can continue going to school. I can continue my education. And I can continue to work on this. The people who invested in me understood that I was, in college, and they're like, "Hey, we don't expect you to do this, but if you were to do this, we would support you, and we'd make for sure that you were able to, continue going on." So while I had a
Okay.
little bit of a safety net in luxury, for me, it wasn't really about that made that decision. I was willing to again eat ramen and basically work and barely get by, right?
Sure, sure. Well,
um,
let's dig in for a second because I think the financial is what the first thing that everybody's thinking, right? It's like
yep.
I can't quit my day job. I need that money to pay my bills,
Hmm.
right? And of course, like duh. But I find that in the entrepreneurial world, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, there seem to be two camps. They're the people that just like operate without a net. They need
Hmm.
that drive in order
Yep.
to like get them to where they need to be, right?
Yep.
You got to operate hungry, and sometimes literally, like you said, like you're
Literally.
you're eating ramen, you're hand to
Yep.
mouth as it were. And but I believe me, that's not for everybody, and that's not a luxury a lot of people have when you're supporting a family, oftentimes, and
Sure.
other things. And so, yeah, like this is a very personal question when you
Hmm.
talk about like quitting your job to pursue your passion,
Yep.
and start a company. Um, you also had the benefit of having another venture ahead of that,
Hmm.
right? And so you
Yep.
kind of already had a taste of what it's like, depending
Hmm.
on yourself for your livelihood.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I think it kind of comes back to the aspect for me, right? I'm an individual who's very driven and motivated and, kind of self starting, right? And for me, I need to be essentially pressed up against a wall in order to perform my best. I got to have that pressure, because I'm a very hungry individual in that regard.
Yeah.
But I will say that at the beginning, I wasn't as hungry. I wasn't as I guess built this way. It was really the process of going through this, saying, okay, hey, I'm going to stare into the void and I'm going to jump in, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to see where it takes me. And that's where it kind of it lit a fire under me, and it said, this is really exciting because I'm doing something that, for one, I've never done before. Two, I have to be successful, because if I'm not, I'm going to fail, and I'm going to fail hard, right?
Right. Right.
But and I also realized that it wasn't so much about the failure; it was more so just about using it to push myself forward.
Yeah.
Everyone's scared of failure. Don't be scared. If you you take the leap and you fail, you can get back up, right? And you
Yeah,
can
but I
keep moving
but,
forward.
but I hear the people thinking right now, but Andrew, that's so much easier said than done, right?
It
Oh, sure,
is.
I fail, like I go broke, and then my kids are
Mhm.
hungry. Like, I mean, come on,
Yep.
it can't be, you know, that you can't be that
Well,
flippant with it.
you can't, but you can. I think. There are many times I have so many stories of how close I was to the wire, even after raising $2.5 million. How close I was to the wire. Credit card debt, or like an eviction notice from an apartment. Like tons of stuff like that.
Right.
Um, it's it. You know, you go through these motions, and when you experience with these things, that the only way I can describe it is you find a way, right? That's how it is. Now, some people, again, they might not be up for that stress. It is
Sure.
incredibly stressful. But I will say that if you go and do it, usually speaking, and I kind of talked to you about this before, you naturally find a way. If if you start building your company in a way to try and support yourself, right? And this is something that I talked about before. You pay yourself first, right? This is something that I
Yeah.
learned along the way, right?
Me too.
Is if you're protected, it
Yeah.
it makes it easier for you to continue moving forward, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just it naturally happens. It just you fall into this groove where you find a way to continue growing your business, you continue developing your products or whatever it is that you're doing, and you continue, just moving forward in general.
Yeah.
But you don't get there until you start taking those steps. And the biggest thing is just step forward. Just do it, right?
Yeah. Sometimes
you
that
know?
step is a real leap, man. It's like getting off the I don't know if you guys remember like, climbing up on the high dive maybe at the pool back in the day and you're literally like the first time you do it.
Mhm.
It's that's a gnarly leap, right? And you just don't know what's going to happen and so, there's a million different analogies and stuff, but your point is well taken that there's a bit of a personal evolution that happens because I always had a tendency to be ultra conservative. Like
Mhm.
I'm not gonna do this until I have X dollars in the bank saved up or whatever it is. And we could talk about that. Like I do think that there's some
Mhm.
sensible, look at what
Sure.
your costs are, what your
Mhm.
regular, living expenses are. And you do want to give yourself a little bit of a runway, because you're not going
Yep.
to do anybody any good if you're just constantly stressed and sweat. So it's like you got to find that balance, right? You got to strike
Mhm.
that balance, and that balance is going to be different. Everybody's risk aversion and risk tolerance is completely different.
Yep.
Um, and it changes. It changes.
Mhm.
For me,
It does.
it absolutely changed. I think it takes some assurance of like being out there and doing it and building some confidence to really okay, this is working, and it takes a long time sometimes. Prior to my starting Repkord, I was a web developer. I was a freelance web developer for almost 20 years. And I
Okay.
fell into that because the job I had before, I got laid off from the job I had before that, where I
Okay.
was a director of web development for an ad agency that the agency kind of tanked. Everybody
Sure.
got laid off, and luckily, I had some contacts when people called me, and I just
Mhm.
kind of naturally was just doing some freelance work until I could figure out what was next. And I was lucky enough that I was good enough what I did. The phone kept ringing, but it probably took like 3 years before
Mhm.
I had just had my first kid at the time. I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
when
Okay.
this project's over, I'm gonna have to go find a job. I got to go get a job. But like, thankfully, like the next job came and the next job came in it, and
Mhm.
it took a while. I'm like, I guess I'm a web developer now, but at no point did I expect to be a freelance, developer. I had to learn all of the minutia around what that meant for how I had to handle my tax because I wasn't getting a W-2 anymore. Or can't
Mhm.
remember what you know what I mean. I wasn't getting
Yep.
a regular paycheck, and so you had to figure out invoicing and billing. And thankfully, that those little stepping stones like allowed me that much more confidence with my next thing, right?
Mhm.
So it's an evolution and stuff. For anybody that's here that is just looking for the formula, Andrew, like
Mhm.
where if you're just talking purely financial in terms of
Mhm.
like what is a good indicator for like say you got a little shop going or
Mhm.
I don't know, doing CNC work for people or making
Sure.
custom signs or something.
Sure.
What kind of revenue or what
Mhm.
like as it relates to your required monthly expenses, like what would you save?
So yeah, so the big thing is every business is going to be a little bit different, right? And everyone's personal needs are going to be a little bit different. For me, when I went off, I was 18 years old, and then when I redid this whole venture with 3D Gloop, I was like 25, right?
Right.
26. I'm still fairly young. I don't have really a family. I'm married now, but at the time it wasn't. At the time when I did my first venture, I was single, right? So for me, I was living on a buddy's couch, didn't have to worry about rent, so my barrier to entry was very low, right?
Sure.
I think I had like maybe a month's worth of savings, when I went and took the leap, right? And
Yeah.
that's like at most, mind you. It was probably more like a couple weeks. But when I redid this for 3D Gloop, my I was kind of again in a very similar position. I didn't have a whole lot saved, but what I did have was a job offer. And I decided to not go
Ah.
down that job offer and go in. That was a very lucrative job offer. We can get into that later. But the thing was for me, I, I'm uh, after doing this, I'm kind of accustomed to living so close to the wire. But I've had other people in kind of the startup space that I've talked with. They kind of mention they like to have around at minimum 3 months roughly worth of savings, and to figure out when that transition point is
Yeah.
is really when the revenue coming in on kind of just an okay month, right, would be enough for them to basically scrape by. Not so much that they couldn't make ends meet, but not so much that they're living lavishly either, right?
Okay.
Just like kind of right there again against the wire where they're hopefully not going to have to touch that savings.
Right.
Because what you find is that when you start devoting more time, you actually start finding ways that you can increase your efficiency or you can increase your revenue by putting more energy into whether it's marketing, whether it's awareness, whatever it might be, right? Maybe it's even stepping up to that next level where you're adding a little bit more detail or a little bit more care to your work instead of being split between two things. And
Yeah.
that just sends your quality through the roof, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's where it's always going to be a gray line, right? And it's going to be kind of muddy waters, if you will, trying to figure out exactly what's right for you. But generally speaking, I'd say somewhere around you have a couple months worth of savings if you're okay being a little bit risky, right?
Yeah.
And when that time is, to make that leap, I would say is somewhere around the lines where your revenue coming in could support you. Now, I'm not talking about taking taxes out or anything else. Like startups, right? You're going to play it a little fast and loose. I think that's kind of the best way in many cases. Where you're probably going to be doing 1099 contractor, right? That's what we
Right.
did here for the longest time. And, you kind of kick some problems down the road. But again, what you find is they kind of work themselves out.
For
Um,
listener, for those of you guys who don't know, 1099 contractor is basically somebody that's not on your payroll, but you're just paying them for the services. And obviously, when your contract is done, you can either just keep going or not. But that puts the onus on the filing and the paying of the taxes on that particular
mhm,
contractor and stuff, which is a very common thing to do. Laws have changed recently, especially in California, thanks to companies like Uber and the gig economy, where they're really cracking down on the use of contractors when you're not supposed to. So, for example, I actually have a manufacturing facility. I am not allowed to have anybody that's like on the floor that's required to be here actually be a contractor. Because we
mhm,
have to make sure we're covered with workman's comp and all these, and these are all things that I had to learn as I went. But
mhm,
that's a bit of a digression. Your point is well taken. That obviously, the calculus is, what is your personal living situation? What are your monthly expenses? Like, what kind of revenue are you getting out, or do you realistically see that you can get out? So, maybe it's you're going to be lean for a bit. Maybe you're going to
mhm.
be in credit card debt for a bit, like so
Yep.
how willing are you to take on debt? Maybe you've got some friends and family that believe in what you're doing that are willing to invest a little bit. And that gives you some runway. So it's really about giving yourself a runway that you're comfortable with, but not. I think back to was it Buffett that had the famous saying, like when he was talking about, actually this was like giving his kids money.
Mhm.
It's like give them enough to do something, but not enough to do nothing. And
Yep.
it's excuse me a second. It's the same mentality. I think that you want just enough to get, going on that runway, but you certainly don't and this is the dangers I think of venture capital a lot
Mhm.
of the time. You get the coffers are really bloated, and
Mhm.
then you're like, "Oh, I got plenty of cash," and it doesn't feed the hunger in the same way.
Yep.
So we're both
Yep.
bootstrapped, and we both like kind of like that. I want to put my money where my mouth is and stuff. I'll say, just to share my personal story. Like, I was lucky enough that I did borrow a little bit money from my parents,
Mhm.
and that certainly helped get me started. But it was really not. I used it solely for operational stuff. So
Sure.
for up until 2020, the beginning of 21, last year,
Mhm.
I was still I pivoted so that my web development stuff, I basically got rid of most of my
Sure.
client, or I just stopped taking more work, and I went
Mhm.
from Repkord being the side hustle to the web development being the side hustle, just so I had a little bit of residual income. And I, unlike you, was I had to kind of learn that pay yourself first. I was paying myself last. I
Mhm.
was using every dollar I had to invest in inventory, to pay my payroll and all that stuff. And you know now I feel more comfortable at that point where I'm like, okay, I'll start taking a draw, and that
Sure.
that number has started to become more consistent. And so at that point, when I felt like we had enough revenue coming in, like, I started taking that. But I'm coming from a major place of privilege in that I still had savings I could draw from. I still had,
Mhm.
I always figured, like, worst case, I can always like take on some more web work if I needed to. Like,
Sure.
I've
Mhm.
always had these like things that I felt like, hey, worst case, I can fall back on this. Um,
Mhm.
I know that's not always the case for everybody. And so it's like that factors into the equation as well, right? Like, how comfortable are you with pivoting back to something else if what you're doing isn't working or takes longer than you expect? Because it will take longer than you
Yeah,
expect.
it will take
It always
significantly
does.
longer. Mhm.
Um,
And I will say expect the pivot, right? You never get it right on your first try. Never.
yeah. Yeah.
And you know, you are naive to think that, hey, I've got this thing right. I'm going to jump in. There's going to be something, whether it's not day 1, day 30, day 90, whenever the pivot is going to need to happen. And
Yeah.
it could be just a simple pivot, but it's going to be something that needs to happen. And, understanding that, hey, I got it wrong, but I'm going to figure it out. That's kind of the biggest key, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
In just taking that leap, because you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah,
right?
Jordan. Yeah, I know it's true. You don't, and you love saying that, and it's absolutely right. There's just the journey is fraught with all the things that we don't know. Jordan
Yep.
Mad Monkey brings up a really good comment in the chat. Sometimes a loan can help spur that drive. I will say personally that was very much the case for me. Like I
Hmm.
said, it was enough. I'll just be honest, but it was I borrowed $20,000 from my parents twice, and then I've since paid it down. I think I still owe them 10. So there's my personal
Awesome.
finances for you guys. I could pay it off. I could pay it off today if I wanted to. But I will say that
Sure.
that did motivate me. Like, I can't fail because, like, I don't want to
Hmm.
stiff my parents. Now, that said, they knew full well, like they're not going to invest something that they're not potentially willing to lose. They love me and all that stuff. And I know that, I
Sure.
know, guys, that is a privilege that I have that not everybody has. Um and I know that, borrowing money is, everybody has a different opinion on that. How much debt is reasonable.
Hmm.
You read these stories about entrepreneurs all the time that'll just like get credit cards and max that debt, which is insane, right? Because you're paying like 20 something percent interest on a lot of that stuff.
Hmm.
And that can be potentially damaging. And I don't know, but you probably have an opinion, like, what degree of debt is there such a thing as good debt, and
Hmm.
is it a motivating tool that you would
Yeah, absolutely. I
advise?
completely think that it is a motivating tool. And for us, when we did Gloop, we didn't put in, we put in a little bit of our own money, but mostly it was just from the grind, right? It was
Yeah.
coming in from trying to get people to buy the product, and that's how we built this. Yes, we had credit cards. Yes, we use that to kind of float the money as it was moving through the accounts. But there are absolutely good debts, because again, that makes you hungry, right?
Right.
If you
Right.
can't pay that debt back, then you're gonna fail. But it's a good way to just keep the pressure on you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when you're not putting that pressure on, right, you start to get relaxed, and that's what happens to a lot of small businesses, right?
Oh,
When they
complacency
when they
kills, man. Yeah.
yeah, so they get going, right? And things are good. Like I see this happen all the time with restaurants, right? Restaurants are one of the most common small businesses.
Yeah.
They'll get going good, and hey, they've got great sales, they've got great, patrons, everything's going good, and then they start like, okay, hey, yeah, let's start relaxing a little bit, right? And they start letting some quality slip here or there, right? Oh, just one time is not that big a deal. You normalize it, and then eventually, what ends up happening is they never continue to grow, and they
Right.
kind of stay stagnant for a while, and then eventually that newness wears off. Maybe enough of this annoyances pile up. They're no longer, patrons are no longer going there as much, and then the business crashes and burns, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas a startup, I think you have to be incredibly hungry, continue operating in that startup mentality, right? Once you start
Mm.
making money as a startup, you're no longer a startup. You're now a company, right?
Yeah.
But if you keep that mentality like, hey, I am hungry, I got to keep running, I got to keep moving, you
Keep the
keep that
hunger.
startup mentality, I think you're going to be good, you know.
Yeah, and I got to tell you guys, like, as much so, just to give everybody some background, Gloop started in what, 2018? I think you told me.
2018.
So
Mhm.
you're 4 years old now. Repkord started
Mhm.
in April of 2016, so we're pushing 6 years. Um,
Mhm.
it took me a good four years, like, honestly,
Mhm.
of like real grind, like before I got to the point where I started paying myself, guys.
Yeah.
So I understand that it's going to get different. And we hear this all the time, the grind and all this stuff. And some people never make it there, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I'm not saying that I've made it by any means either, because there are plenty of things that could just make the whole thing come crashing down at any
Yep.
given moment. But,
House
to
of
get to
cards,
the,
right?
it is absolutely a house of cards. And, y- you know, to get to that comfort level, I mean, it's a great achievement, but you also can't lose that hunger, like you said. Like, I still
Mhm.
operate paying myself the least amount, and still vastly because there's a lot of growth that still needs to happen. um
Mhm.
Maybe a bit of a digression, but when we start talking about what is success, and getting more into that, there is a tendency in the business world, I think, for people to just want to grow, 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 right? Like,
Mhm.
you get into the race and you go, and
Mhm.
you're not looking back, and you're not ever stopping to analyze, like, wait, do I want, what am I going for here? Like, what is the goal? Like, because business is by nature just like like it scale it seems like it wants to scale, and it can happen fast. Like, you hit a critical mass point, like once you start getting a certain degree of customer repeat customer base exposure, vendor,
Mhm.
resellers, things like that, that where it ramps up quick, and it's not necessarily the best move to just like chase after that growth, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So we'll have to reserve that. I think we had it on our topic list as like this could be its own
Mhm.
thing,
Yep.
but it's something to be mindful of, because you certainly could get in a place. There are plenty of very successful single owner businesses out there that are just more than happy to just work out of their garage. I have a good friend that's a knife maker, and
Mhm.
it's his job in retirement,
Sure.
but he doesn't want to grow. He's like, I don't want to, I don't need to grow. I'm happy. I make the amount
Yeah.
of knives that I need to like sustain the business, pay myself a little something, then I go on vacation.
And
Um,
that's more of a lifestyle business, right? Where you're
Lifestyle
doing
business. That's a
something,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, you're doing something to help you live a specific lifestyle that you want. And there's nothing wrong with those lifestyle businesses, right?
yeah,
And a lot of times, you kind of naturally fall into those as a business owner, right? Where you get a little bit complacent, but hey, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't need to continue to grow. You don't need to be the next Uber, right, or
yeah,
Facebook or
yeah.
something like that. You
Well, and I
know.
don't know about you, but I mean, to me, that's my dream for retirement, right? Like, I'm not the kind
Hmm.
of person that can just like go sit on a beach and read. Like, I can't do nothing. Okay. But
Yep.
I would love to just make it manageable, make it comfortable, make sure if it's not fun, I'm not doing it, and Uh,
Mhm.
that's I'm absolutely not there. I do tons of not fun stuff all the time. And that,
Yes.
you know, the way I reward myself with the growth is when I can afford to, say, hire somebody else to do all the things that I don't like doing, right? And so
Mhm.
hopefully, like, that to me, that's my goal. That's my strategy. I want to get the company to a place that it's sustainable, that I have the support that I need to do all the things that I'm not good at or don't want to be doing. Uh and and then, you know, just I don't know. I don't know if it's cruise. I don't know if it's sell it. But
Sure.
to have the options, right? Um,
Sure.
th-
Absolutely.
this is a new thing for me, coming from the web development world, where I was a one man wolf pack. You know, the company was me, to having something that actually, like, feels like it could be a tangible company that could be sold, is a completely different thing. And that's, you know, it's a different service based job industry where you're solo. Like, yes, you could start hiring other people and subcontracting out and create an agency, I suppose. um
Mhm.
but that wasn't the direction I wanted to go with that business. That was part of the reason I kind of got away from it. I was kind of getting burned out on that. And we talk about the
Sure.
pivot a lot of times too, allowing yourself the pivot, getting, you know, succeeding to a level two where,
Mhm.
you know, maybe you're pivoting for a lifestyle choice, not necessarily out of necessity to, you know, keep the business running.
Absolutely.
Yeah, lots
Yeah.
lots there.
For us, for well, for me, right? I can't speak for the other Andrew. My goal is I want to build kind of something that lasts. And to me, I see this as a way to leave a kind of a mark. Now, I'm not saying Gloop's going to be around forever, right? But what I want to do is
The hell
I
you
want to
say?
continually I want to
Empire
continue
of Sticky.
I want to continue building other cool things. And I'm a guy who again is always driven to push myself to learn something new, right? And there's always things that I'm working on. It's the way I keep myself kind of contained and sane in many cases as a maker, right? I
Sure.
have that itch and I've got to scratch it a little bit. But this is a means to the next project, the next thing that I want to work on, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a way that I can kind of leapfrog from one step to the next. Uh, you know, I want to build Gloop to have kind of that empire sticky. There's a really cool product list. There's really cool things that we've been working on kind of in the background that we don't really talk about, but that I fully believe have the potential of really changing things, in many cases. Whether we'll ever get to actually commercialize them, who knows, right? We're going down a really hard path where we're bootstrapping. We could go out probably today and, with my experience, I could probably raise a couple $1,000,000 for
Yeah.
how far I've taken the company, right?
Yeah.
And only have to give up just a few percent. But I don't want to, right? It's taking
Right.
away that drive. And I've been tempted before, right? When we won our Arch grant, right? That was
Yeah.
$50,000 of basically free money. It was like,
Yeah.
wow, we can run so much faster because we had all of this cash just infused in the business. But it was very tantalizing, right? We're like, oh man, we could just like there's investors that have talked to us that are interested in throwing money our way, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
want us. But
Yeah.
again, it wasn't the right thing for the business because I wanted the challenge, but also at the same time, I'm using it for growth, right? And I'm
Right.
using it for personal growth more so. So it's a
Right.
little bit of both, where it's a lifestyle, but it's also hopefully something where I can turn into kind of a legacy in
Yeah.
a case,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and you're absolutely right. I've had the same temptation. The temptation is strong to chase after dollars sometimes, because dollars are, you know, what fuel, you know, your ability to do the
Hmm.
things that you want to. Maybe it's get more equipment, maybe it's hire more people and all that stuff. But you know, when you're talking about equity, you know, equity is expensive. You know, people do not,
Hmm.
like, you're right. Yeah, fine. Maybe you'll give up a point or two, and in the big scheme of things, if you're growing to where you know, you hope to be, hopefully that's nothing.
Yeah.
But it also does, you know, can come with a cost of, like you said, other people's expectations, you know. And
Hmm.
it can get bad enough, like some people, like, you know, give up enough where they lose their business and stuff like that. So, you know,
And it happened to me,
yeah.
that exact scenario happened to me in my first one, you know?
Yeah.
It was something where I played too fast, too loose. I raised money, and eventually it led to me departing the company and just saying, you know what, I'm done. Right.
Yeah.
Um, so I've kind of experienced a little bit of both, right?
Yeah. Well, and once you've had, and Vishal brings up an interesting point because bootstrapping is a one-way street. Um it can be. I mean, you could certainly always, there's always people that will want to invest in you. Like you could probably, if you're
Hmm.
successful, if you're doing a good job, like there are people that will absolutely want to lend you money. There's no
Hmm.
doubt in that. But I think the point of it is more that once you start down the road and you're like, wait a minute, I don't need investors. Like I
Hmm.
can do this myself. Now, I told you, I was in the grind for 4 plus years, so
Yep.
that is the price of bootstrapping a lot of time. And it when you say grind, it's like you're doing all the things you hate. Like I was doing my own tax. I still did my own tax. I keep saying every year I'm gonna
Hmm.
hire an accountant to do my own, but it's like I force myself into that discomfort because I want to be that close to the pulse and I want to understand it. Now that said, you start crossing into that space where that's a luxury that I just can't afford in terms of like where I need to be focusing my
Sure.
time and stuff like that. Um, but it is a good, a good thing to understand. It's not to say one way is right or the other is right. I think that there's any number of ways that you can do it. You can be successful. You can be failure.
Hmm.
Tons of both venture funded and bootstraps have failed and succeeded.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
um, it again comes down to that kind of that personal, like, who are you, what is it that you're willing to put in, what kind of skin. We didn't really and it's a personal question, you don't have to share this if you don't want to, but it's like, talk
Hmm.
about your amount of skin in the game. um I know, like
Yeah.
I told you I got a loan, but I also threw in way more of my own money as well,
Yeah.
to the tune of about I think about 80,000, like when I between when I first started. So now
Sure.
that and
Yeah.
the
So
loan, that's personal
yeah.
finance saving. I know that's
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting, but it's and there's a lot of people that you shouldn't be sharing that information, but I think that
Oh
this
yeah.
is kind of
Yeah. So I
interesting
think
stuff.
for us, right? The story of Gloop is pretty funny. So it was about a year and a half after I officially left my previous startup, and I was just done. I was burnt out. The investors that I had, the private equity guys, they wanted to do a different direction. Too much infighting, too much, this, that, whatever.
Mhm.
But I was on my way out for about a year before that. So there was a period of time for around 2-3 years where I was just kind of bumming around, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I had money where I wasn't, hungry. I was living out of savings, whatever. But it was, starting to dry up, right? I knew I was going to have to do something. And
Yep.
so I started looking for jobs, that sort of stuff. And that was when it was like, hey, I don't really want to work for someone else again, right? Like
Yep.
I didn't like that the first time. And so I think I got down to roughly like 25, about 25 grand, right? Whereas like,
Okay.
you know what? I think I'm gonna make a run. I'm gonna do this project that I've been working on. I was helping the other Andrew. Go
All
ahead.
in. No, I was just gonna ask, did you just like
Okay.
push all your chips to the middle? That's what I envisioned you doing. All in.
Yeah, basically. So I was helping the other Andrew. So his dog, unfortunately, got basically leukemia, bone cancer, and he got back into 3D printing. We had both been 3D printing for a long time. Really building for prototypes, mechanical engineering stuff. All of that fun stuff.
Okay.
He was having problems with his. I think he got a CR10. And he was having problems. He came to me. He's like, "Hey, could you help me? Like, I'm having some issues." And I said, yeah, sure, why not? And I started working with him trying to figure out because he was trying to glue plastics together. And I was like, hey, I kind of know how to do this. And so I came up with a solution and we figured it out. We're like, okay, this is cool. We never intended on turning it into a business,
Right.
right? At that moment,
Yeah.
right? But it was around, I don't know, a couple weeks later. I was like, wait a second. Like I was constantly thinking about what I wanted to do, right? I was
Yep.
like, what if we took this and turned it into a business and actually turned it into a product because it seemed to help you and you really enjoyed it. why not see if other people would enjoy it, right?
Right. Right.
And that was that moment where I said, "Oh, hey, I've got a little bit of savings left. I'm gonna put it all in, right? And we're just gonna give it this thing a run for it,
Yep.
and just see where it goes." And so that was where we just, Andrew as well. He didn't have a job at the time. He was actually, oh, I'm sorry, he had a offer of employment. So his offer of employment was for a defense contractor.
Okay.
And I was then, after about a few weeks, few months, I'd say, into this, I got an offer of employment that I said, you know what? Nope, I'm not doing it. I'm doing this. And it was a lot, but so I put about 25,000 of my own money in at the very beginning, and
Okay.
then we ended up raising, I think it was $8,000 in the Kickstarter, and then
That's right.
over the course of the next few months, again, we had to put more money in. My wife, well, at the time she was just my girlfriend, said, "Hey, here's a couple extra grand. Let's put it in." The other Andrew contributed, a few grand, just to,
Yeah.
again, keep the thing moving. But
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
always wanted to make sure we didn't want to go out and ask for loans from people, because again, we wanted that drive, that you know that I would say stress of being able to connect the loop, right, and
But
make it
like the
work on its own.
manageable stress, not to the
Yes.
point you're sweating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So 25
Yeah.
in seed. Uh
Yep.
and to be clear too, when I was saying when we talk about over the years, like when I was saying like, oh, I put in 80 of my own and then I had a loan for 40, like that was over the course of the many years that I've been
Sure.
doing this. I seeded with 20 as well to start. And then
Mhm.
you kind of, and that's a good way to do it, right? It's like you're testing the waters. Like that
Mhm.
I'm not an all in guy. Like I didn't take all of my savings and necessarily push, but like at the time I was still married and we said like, okay, let's see what we can get with 20. And when you look at that as compared to like, well, had I invested that 20 grand in the stock market or something at the time, you know, I'm
Yeah.
still probably not as well off as I would have done. But like, I think that I'm on a trajectory, and I love the fact that I'm investing in myself and my own returns. And so it's like
Absolutely.
over time, I think the potential is far, 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 far greater. But
Yeah, for us, it was very much so all in, right? And it was a little hard to stomach at first. But it was pretty funny because, so at the time when we were launching the Kickstarter, we knew that there was a potential reward and fund, right? And we weren't trying to actually make a full run at it. We were just trying to see, hey, could it actually start, right? Because
yeah,
I could have always said, okay, hey, I'm gonna go get a day job, somewhere else, right? You always have those safety nets that you build for yourself. But for us, it was, okay, let's invest in the equipment, let's invest in the laboratory, let's invest in all of the stuff to actually synthesize the polymers, and everything else. And I remember buying all of this stuff before the Kickstarter even succeeded. And
yeah,
so it was that moment that we had this drive already, and we're like, hey, we just read about Earth, like the inaugural Earth, and we're like, let's buy a hotel room, right? And we bought the cheapest hotel room, and we literally left on a Thursday night at like 11 o'clock, and we drove 16 hours straight through. I think it was
yeah,
close to 18,
yeah,
straight through. And we got there, and we set up, and that's kind of the event that really launched the company, right?
yeah,
But again, it was driven from the aspect that we went all in, right? Both Andrew and I were like, you know what, we're going to put everything we have into this thing. We're going to do it all in. And like, we took my car, we drove it there. It didn't have headlights, mind you, and we
what?
drove at night.
What?
Yes, it had running lights but no headlights.
Oh, okay, at least
We
had
were
running lights. Okay,
Yep, we were
jeez,
basically, out of money, right? It was like, hey, listen, we have to make this thing work because we invested all of this money up front in order to produce the stuff. We don't even know if it's actually going to work yet, right? But it was one of those things where we bet, and we bet hard. And
right?
we drove all the way to Earth, and again, it was just on a whim, right? We're like, we're going to give this thing a shot.
Yeah,
And it worked out, right? Now sometimes it doesn't, and when it doesn't, you have to be comfortable with losing that, right?
yeah,
And for me, I was comfortable. Yes, it would have sucked, right? But at the end of the day, if it didn't work, it didn't work,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
I'd been through this enough before to know that, hey, I could always pivot, I could always take it and turn it into something else. That's the way I look at it. And if you
Yeah.
always invest in yourself, I don't think you can. I, I don't think you really can disappoint yourself, because if you honestly give it a good shot, right, you're gonna
Yeah.
grow from it. You're gonna learn, and
Yeah.
I think it's money well spent, right?
I think that's right. I think that so much of the decision of whether or not you're ready to make the leap has to do with your personal belief in yourself a lot of the time.
Hmm.
That you have to have the confidence in yourself that you're going to get there. So for some people it's money, some people it's other indicate. You mentioned two great indicators. Like Kickstarter is used or has been used to good effect. It's
Hmm.
been used to bad effect too, but it's been used to good
Yes.
effect as an indicator. So when I say indicator, I'm talking about like what are those confidence builders that take you from like the side hustle to the like let's go all in moment, right? So
Hmm.
Kickstarter is kind of a again, like I think that's allowed people a nice way to like kind of dip your toe in and you're playing with other people's investment to some extent. Um I I I think everybody has their own opinions about Kickstarter, but
Yep.
when I think you guys use it appropriately, you raised, you know, a good amount to help the process along to say like okay
Hmm.
this is but it correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost like it was a good indicator to you that like it was validation of the idea
We didn't
and to
have to
keep
have the
going.
Kickstarter. Yeah, we
You could
we
have done
we
it without
raised
it.
$8,000, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
didn't
yeah,
need the Kickstarter to actually do it.
right,
Don't get me wrong, it really helped, right?
yeah,
But at the end of the day, right, again, I was willing to lose the initial investment, but also at the same time I wasn't, right? And that was the
yeah,
drive. And so if the Kickstarter didn't work, we were going to figure out some way to relaunch the company in some other capacity, right?
sure,
You know.
sure.
So,
But
yeah.
and a lot of that is like I said, it's that's you having the confidence in yourself that I can pivot, right? Like
Mhm.
that is so much the real meat and potatoes of the thing. Do you
Mhm.
have confidence in yourself that if this doesn't work, I'm gonna be fine? There are a lot of
Yep.
people that sounds obvious, but there's a lot of people out there that are just like, doom and gloom. Like, if this doesn't work, I'm going to be destitute. I'm not going to have any
Mhm.
friends. My family that lent me money is going to disown me. Like if you feel that way, if you don't have like at least some baseline belief in yourself, you're not going to be able to like look for those indicators and keep stepping forward because really success is such a moving target. It's like there's stepping stones
Mhm.
along the way. So Kickstarter for you was one of them. I was the same as you, where it's like when Travis and I first put together the rep designed the rep box, we just like let's go to earth with this and see how it goes. And that was such an amazing validation of having
Mhm.
people come in, look at it, say, "Hey, can I buy this from you?" And you're like, "Oh, there's actually something here." I really, really recommend these like trade show maker fairs, like the community interaction stuff for that
Mhm.
reason. Like you need that metric to like help you build the confidence that you need to take the next step because it's just a series of steps.
Yep. Absolutely. And I will say that you will always find an excuse to not do something, right? It's too easy. I think the biggest thing is you just got to sometimes you just got to do it, right? And if you're going to do it, give it your all, right? Really just do it right. Do it right the first time.
Yeah.
And stop coming up with that next excuse of, "Oh, I didn't do it because of this or I didn't do it because of that." You
Yeah.
know. So,
Excuses aren't good. But that's way way easier said than done for a
it
lot of
is.
people. Like having that confidence, and it just depends where you are in your life. There's a lot of people that are just like I said, the risks are lower
Mhm.
when it's just you and you're young and you've got your entire life ahead of you. It's a totally different calculus when you've got people dependent on you for food and support and stuff too. So, like again, very personal decision, but there are little experiences that we've had
Mhm.
to get us there. Really quick show note, we're closing in on about an hour. For those of you who have been with us on the past Twitter Spaces episodes, we do have a ability to call in if you are interested in sharing a question or comment, where it's audio only, but we'll hear you and the stream can hear you. The link for that is in the description. You got to expand it so it goes down. It's a little tiny URL and stuff like that, and that links you directly into our kind of our switchboard. So if
Mhm.
you're interested in doing that, you certainly can. And don't worry, it doesn't just immediately throw you into the feed. We have operators standing by. And if that's not for you, if you're not in a place where you can talk, we really always welcome the feedback in the chat as well. If you want to ask questions in there, I've already seen a bunch of great ones, good commentary. Uh, so feel free. Whatever, we are here for you guys to help try to operate in whatever way. But if you have questions and comments that we can kind of dig in on a little bit as we wrap up, we can get those out there. Um, wow, like this is this is such a great topic, and I don't feel like I feel like I owe it to you guys to share a story of like hardship, I guess, for me in my journey, because I had a moment, and I'm guessing you may have had a moment, or a lot of people have a series of moments where I was like this close, the 11th hour, to
Oh,
just
yeah. Oh, oh, yeah.
I'm done.
Yep. Yep.
And in fact, that was where I was at the point where I was like taking out a loan. And I think I've shared with a lot of you guys before, like, unfortunately, I went through a divorce during the middle of it. That doing your own business is really hard. You're married to a completely other thing too. So if you're married
Mhm.
and then you're married to a business, you got two significant
Mhm.
others oftentimes, and it's very stressful in a lot of different ways and all that stuff. So um, there was definitely a moment for me where I'd been reinvesting, hadn't been paying myself, was not only doing I was doing my web development and I was doing Repkord on the side. It was like breaking even at best for three. It was I took a loss the first 2 years. I broke even the third, or very minimal. So it's like I was like just I felt like I was this close for a long time, but it wasn't just quite getting over the hump. And
Mhm.
I was at a low point because like I'd just gone through it. I'm like, what am I doing? Like it's this giving me gray hairs. This is stressing me out to no end. I feel like I'm going financially the wrong direction. I was doing fine. I was making really good money doing what I was doing. I wasn't happy, but I was making good money as a web developer.
Sure.
Um, and I did have a moment where I was like, I think I'm done. And had a had a good heart to heart with my dad about the whole thing. And I said, you know what, like I think and that was probably my all in moment where I was like, okay, um I wasn't in a point where I could put any more of my personal funding in, or I didn't want to, at least. And said, I think if we can really like get the sales on our rep boxes and stuff to like over this level, and I think if I just, I'm going to put 20 more in, and that was going to be my indicator.
Mhm.
And that was right at about the time we'd already been to earth, we'd already done that. Sales were steady, but again, for a long time it was like maybe 5 sales a week or something. It wasn't even like a
Okay.
sale a day. um
Okay.
and I wasn't paying myself, and I was putting in all these hours, and I was trying to do both jobs at once. And so I
Mhm.
don't know, I don't know how I came up with that number, but I was just like 20. Like I kind of used a financial indicator. And
Mhm.
I think the loan, like Jordan and other people were saying, like, was a good, like, if I'm borrowing it from like, I don't want to disappoint my dad. When I think about failure,
Mhm.
um, the indicators of fail, like, one, I don't ever want to have to go back to work for somebody else. I think that's a strong indicator
Mhm.
for a lot of entrepreneurs that drive us to keep going. And two, like, I don't want you know my dad to feel like he invested in me and didn't make the right
Mhm.
choice. And luckily, like, we just kind of kept going, and but it was a lot of reinvestment, and then I put a little bit more of my own in, and then he put a little bit more in when we started picking up distributor deals. And then it tipped. And
Yeah.
that, but like I said, 4.5 years, almost 4 years before I got to that point. I don't know.
Oh,
do
yeah.
you have do you have any of those almost
Yeah.
out
Yeah, there was a
moments?
there was a period of time shortly after we launched that, we knew this would happen, right? But it was, where we were where we were still selling the product, but we hadn't actually delivered anything yet. And, it was starting to get really tight because we had a lot more money going out than money coming in. And it was getting hard. We managed through that. That wasn't too big of a deal, but it was about 6 months later where things started slowing down really, really bad. And we couldn't figure out why. We couldn't figure out, was it just people weren't interested in the product? Was it that we weren't getting, enough engagement? What was it, right? We were selling like maybe a bottle a day at the most, right? And like for those that don't know, a bottle anywhere from $20 to $30, right? And you can't live on 20 or $30 a day. And that's just revenue, right? That doesn't
That's not,
include
yeah. You
the
got to pay for your
fees or
materials.
the,
Yeah,
the
sure.
actual materials, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, it started getting really tight. We did manage through it. I don't think that we ever drew a line saying, listen, if it doesn't pick up, we're gonna go under. But there was definitely some moments where it's like, okay, hey, we're gonna need to seriously look at see what's going on. Do we need to seriously reevaluate by raising some money to put into marketing or whatever? Because still to this day we don't do any marketing. It's
Never to
terrible.
the extent we would like to, right? I feel the same way.
Yeah, but you know th- what was also interesting is during the pandemic, right? Sales they exploded for us, which was awesome. But we kind of equate that to everyone being home and like, oh hey, I have this extra, whatever it is, commute time that I don't have to do. And also, when people work from home, they're nowhere near as efficient as they are when they're in the office.
Don't get me started
So a
on
lot
that.
of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so a lot of them are working, on their own personal hobbies, so that we equate that. But it was about 2021 that things, we were in a groove. We were able to pay me. We were able to pay all of the bills, everything else on time, and have a little bit money left over to reinvest into the company. But 2021 came around, and there was a period of like 3 or 4 months where we weren't even breaking even.
Yeah.
And it was out of nowhere. And I remember having a conversation with the other Andrew, just sitting down saying, What are we going to do? Like, this, like, things were great. What's going on? Like, this came out of nowhere. And we had some late night discussions and trying to figure out, okay, well, if things don't right the ship, then we're going to have to bring someone else in to help us right this ship,
Yeah.
because clearly we were
Yeah.
doing something right and then something changed and now we're not.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So,
But it's funny because change happens quickly. We've got so much good commentary and questions in the chat. I want to. You mentioned, first of all, you mentioned the pandemic, and that's been an
mhm,
interesting one too, because I think at first I was like, well, um, if we can do this well in a pandemic year, we can do, great wherever. Like I was taking the backwards look at it because it felt like for a long time everybody was just like climbing up on spending and are not sure about,
mhm,
we hear about the financial struggles of things, but your point about there's a lot more people at home, you're at home and you're taking up new hobbies and all that stuff, and so they're spending money on hobby based stuff, which we both,
mhm.
exist in as well. So that's a thing. Who's in a name, thank you very much. Mentioned, I didn't even bring up the whole Operation Shields Up chapter. That was a very big um digression, and it added to the calculus a lot too, because there were times where it felt really rewarding because we had this great community behind it, and that was a great indicator. But then at the same time, I didn't have any revenue really coming in from anything else, and so that the stress of all that, living off of my savings during that time, and the fact that I had like gotten way deeper into something than I ever expected to, and then spent longer trying to figure out how do I like wrap this up to a reasonable conclusion and not just like, oh, I'm walking away from this. Um, that was a very big chapter with a lot of ups and
Mhm.
downs as well in it. Vishal brought up a really great question that I want you to take a stab at first. He says, how much did the fact that a big operator from another country can come in at scale and wipe you out? How much did that weigh on your mind before you decided to go all in?
So, I think it comes from my experience kind of developing products. there is always going to be a potential for someone to come in and wipe you out, right? There's always going to be potential. Doesn't matter how big you are. If
Sure.
someone wants to do it, they will absolutely do it. That being said, it's not the greatest business decision, right? You see all the time in the TV shows, like, oh, hey, such and such company's coming in to ruin me, right? That's
Yeah.
not really how it works.
Yeah.
Usually, how it works is it's over time that they continually erode some of your customer base. But generally speaking, if you develop something that, even if it's not proprietary and you have a brand behind it and you have an image and a community behind it, it is an uphill battle, even for a big operator to come in and steal that away. It
Yeah.
can happen. It does happen, but it's not the norm. I'd say it's the exception. And, for us, right, there's a giant behemoth adhesive companies out there.
Yeah.
And they could absolutely come in and say, hey, we're going to do something in the 3D printing space as well. This is why for us, we focus so heavily on branding and trying to like unify things. Like there's so much that I would love to talk about this because we've spent the past, I'd say, 2 years developing something that we cannot wait to release. A whole new, kind of identity, whole new everything, just building up to this point. And I think you have to realize, yes, that's a potential, but I don't think it's as big of a risk as many people led on to believe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's just my opinion. Most of the time, if a company wants to do that, it's easier and cheaper for them to buy you,
Yeah.
right? And that's what happens. That's literally how it works. Is
Yeah.
so many companies, they want to be in the space, they look and see what the competition is. Instead of them reinventing the wheel, why not buy it and just
Yeah.
run with it?
Yeah.
You know?
I think your point about, and we've talked about this on past shows too, is like the being in fear. Fear is shouldn't be a motivator. I mean, beyond like when you get into the realm of fear, like there is like, I'm a little stressed, I'm a little concerned about this. Like it's good to, when you're
Hmm.
looking at your SWOT analysis, that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. If you're over time evaluating, I always advise, like, I think it's a good thing just as an exercise to do that. And when you're looking at your threats, competition is always the first thing that people are thinking of, talking about.
Hmm.
Um, for me, for a long time, I was like, a child can reverse engineer my flagship product.
Hmm.
If somebody in China decided that they wanted to just start cranking out these things, like it wouldn't be hard for them to do it. Um, but I don't I don't think I ever stopped and said, "I'm not gonna do it because that this could be done
Hmm.
cheaper by some other, competitor." Like, the part of the reason that your customer base wants to work with you is because it's you. It's not
Hmm.
like, I'm just looking for the cheapest. There are always people out there that are looking for the cheapest X, Y,
Yes.
Z, but, like,
Hmm.
we don't have a commodity product in the way that, all people look at all consumables are the same, or
Hmm.
whatever. um maybe I don't know, maybe you're moving toward that and stuff, but like there are some that would I don't need Gloop, I can use CA glue or whatever
Hmm.
interchangeably. They don't know what they're
Yep.
talking about, but the point
Hmm.
is that I don't think having that fear is of any benefit to you, because
It's not.
um and I don't think it often ends up being very founded very often either.
Yeah,
Even if I think competition is a good indicator a lot of times of some degree of success, because
it
if
is.
there's money to be made in it, your competitors will pop up, and
Hmm.
that if anything is almost a sign that, like, hey, you're on the right track here. Like,
Hmm.
there's other companies willing to invest in doing that and stuff. And so, yes, now you got to work a little bit harder for that customer base and stuff, but there's no reason that you can't be successful from that. Just to share a really
Absolutely.
quick anecdote around that, when we were doing the Shields Up thing that I talked about earlier, for those of you that don't know what that was, for we shut down and started making PPE in the early days of the pandemic, face shields. And it was like kind of the first experiment in distributed manufacturing, where I literally like put out the Twilight Bark call of like, everybody with a 3D printer, send me this frame and we'll laser cut the thing and we'll handle the pack and distribution and all that stuff. But early on, the big companies were like, "Oh, we're gonna do this too." Apple, I don't know if you remember this or not, but Apple like had basically created a face shield that was like all laser cut and folded. It was like an origami
Mhm.
um, face shield. And
Mhm.
I had so many people who were like, "Well, that was fun. This is gonna be over now because Apple's gonna make a million of these." They were saying something like, "We're gonna make a million of these a week." I don't know. I know that they made some of them. I don't know what happened
I don't think it
with it.
ever turned into anything.
I
Yeah.
don't think it ever turned into anything. I think that a lot
No.
of these companies oftentimes are just trying to get that little PR
They're
piece,
trying to
and
get the
then
clout, the
yeah, they're
internet
just trying,
clout.
"Hey, we're gonna do it too." And meanwhile,
Mhm.
like we're actually pounding the pavement, like packing these things and shipping them and stuff like that too. So, that fear was, well, one, it wasn't a fear for me, but a lot of people were like, This is stupid. Like, how are you gonna compete with Apple?" And I'm like, "Well, I'll believe it when I see it." And I
Mhm.
don't think it ever really came to fruition. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. If anybody knows differently in the chat, um, but that kind of stuff happens all the time, and so
Mhm.
sometimes it's just you know marketing, PR
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
Uh, yeah. Um,
So do we not have any takers on the call in?
yeah. We'll have to dip our toe into that slowly because who knows? Like we tested it on our
Mhm.
own, but I don't know. Hopefully, we just might not have any takers today too, and so it's something we can layer on
Sure.
over time. But I'm happy if if people want to throw questions in the chat too. If you don't feel like you want to, a lot of times people getting out there and throw their voice out there, that's intimidating, right? Even if it's
Sure.
like we're not seeing you. Um. Oh, quick shout out, Mike. Mike's got a birthday today. Happy birthday, Mike! Never
Oh,
let the
awesome.
machines
Yeah, happy
win
birthday.
up in Canada. Good. Uh, Long-standing customer of mine. Met him at I
Yeah.
think the first Earth I was at, or maybe the second Earth I was at. But yeah, man. Ah, I don't know. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up tonight?
Yeah, geez. There's so much to talk about, right? You
We
know,
don't have to do it all today, Andrew. We don't have to do it all
yeah,
today.
I know. It's just, I could keep going and going and going. So it's probably best that we just try and put a bow on this and call it good. You know, it, it's uh, it's always going to be a challenge. I think for anyone to get up the mind and the muster, right, to just go and take the leap. But I can say that if you're doing something and you're able to have a business with it, right? Like let's say you're selling something on Etsy, and people are buying it, and you're generating a decent amount of money. Um, Seriously evaluate what it looks like for you to take that leap. You can do, a SWOT analysis. You can, do kind of a pros and cons list of, hey, can I actually do this? What am I going to have to change in my life to actually make this happen? But
Yeah,
I think doing it is, you're going to look back if you didn't and say, "Gosh, I wish I would have." There are so many things that I look back on and say, "Man, I wish we would have done this sooner." Right? Hindsight is 2020. Um, but I don't regret even the times that I failed. I don't regret it.
yeah.
Because I learned so much.
Yeah, and it's gotten so cliche. Like the fails that's where all the learning is. That's where the teaching is, and it sucks when you're going through it. But you know,
Mm-hmm.
you're never really failing. You're just learning and hopefully
Mm-hmm.
adapting and going to the next thing. So it's like I said, it's a number of steps. Oh, look at this. We actually
Hey.
we need to get the actual audio here. It looks like Mah- I apologize if I say this wrong. Michael, maybe Mayhall. He's gonna. We'll have him come on here and let's see here. Let me just make sure I can hear him real quick, and then we'll add him in. And all right, hey, you are on with Pooch and Andrew.
How we doing, guys? Can you guys hear
Welcome.
me?
Yeah, say
Yeah.
your name for us so we can.
Hey, it's Mayhall. I know it's
M-
spelled a little differently, but it's
Mihal.
Polish.
Ah, all right.
Oh,
Well, welcome,
awesome.
Mihal. How are you? Thanks for joining us today.
Good. Uh,
Yeah.
I have a question because I feel like with what you guys were saying, I'm kind of in that situation. in a very similar situation. I'm a software engineer right now. I'm working for a large Fortune company, and I started 3D printing in 2020, and I didn't see what it was going to become. Right now,
Okay.
I'm making pretty much the same thing doing both, right? And I'm not sure if you
Okay.
guys have been there. You get pretty thinned out by doing both at the same time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely, you do.
so I'm in the middle of that, and I know that's a personal thing. There's so many factors that it doesn't it's hard to have a clear answer. So
Sure.
my question is, since I didn't see this coming, I stuck with the Creality products just because they were on the cheaper side, and a lot of forums were out there, so a lot of questions I had were able to be
Okay.
answered. So I ended up scaling up to about, I have 23, but 20 CR10 V2s
Ooh.
are
Oh
running
wow.
24/7 pretty much, making my computer accessory products, right?
Okay.
Awesome.
So I'm in the middle of, I bought some products and I'm doing my own testing. I'm doing linear rails and the E3D Chimera upgrade onto those.
Okay.
And I'm not seeing if it's totally worth it to upgrade all of them. My question is it worth it to upgrade all these printers, or does it make more sense just to right off the bat keep these printers running? They're doing a good job. Scale with Prusas and start liquidating those and kind of like phasing them out.
This is a really great question. First of all, thank you for jumping on and asking. And
Mm-hmm.
it's near and dear to me because I run a rather substantial print farm. I do run Prusas, but before that, I was running actually a bunch of sidewinders that I had modded. So I've been down this
Mm-hmm.
road. Um, and this is obviously everybody's gonna have a different opinion here. Okay, but
Mm-hmm.
let's just talk really quick, Mihal, if you could, just give everybody that doesn't know like a sense of like what's your cost on the upgrades, just materials cost, and then what kind of time does it take you to
The
do these upgrades?
Chimera runs me after tax about 130 because I get it off of I think it's Matter Hackers is I think is the website. I buy them off there.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay,
then
shout out Matt
there's
Hackers.
there's uh there's another website. I'm not sure what their official name is, but full kit XYZ cost me just under $600. So
So you're
So
talking about a
s-
730 all in.
yeah.
You know,
So the for
before your
a
time.
hundred, yeah, for 130 bucks more, I can get a Prusa, that the standard Prusa. I think that's the Mark III, correct?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mark 3S
For
plus now,
for
but yeah,
for just a little
Yeah.
bit more, and I get another printer, and
right.
B, it has the auto leveling. It
Hmm.
it's a standard printer, so it's OEM, shouldn't have that many issues.
Yeah, and to be fair, proofs aren't perfect,
Oh,
but
no printer's perfect. I understand that.
having run farms of Creality, so I said I had Sidewinders. I also had when we were doing Shields Up, Creality actually donated a bunch of Ender threes
Yeah, I
to
saw
us. So
your
I've got a
video
lot of
about you running the print mills as well. Those are really cool.
print mills, yeah, and so a lot of the challenges with that are the potential instabilities, like just the quality of the board, quality on the boards, like having boards go out, having fans go out, like there's always something. And the Prusas will have fails and stuff here and too, but is vastly less. I will say
Mm-hmm.
that. The other value that I think people don't take on or take into account with the Pruses is, like I keep saying, like it's the ecosystem. It's the amount of testing they do around having a slicer that is validated for these very printers regularly. It is still one of the biggest communities out there. There are a ton of people out there. It is a little bit more, but when you're going down this road now, where and your biggest cost isn't necessarily in your materials upgrade, but the amount of time it's going to take you to upgrade all of those things, and what kind of quality difference are you really seeing? Like, I mean, it's probably better for that particular printer than say a stock CR10 S2.
Hmm.
Yeah.
V2,
Oh,
sorry.
I've done some tests. It's for the same quality, the print times have gone down between 30 to 20% depending on the product.
So you're cutting time too, which is good now. But talk about how much time it takes you to implement these upgrades. So you're doing linear rail. We're gonna talk about the cost of that plus the Chimeras. Good. I mean, you can get a really good printer out of that too. Now that said, I don't know what your opinion, Andrew, is on like the hardware side of it, but whatever. If you had to replace the board, you could do that too. But that's the thing. You're going down this road. And
Hmm.
if you're serious about like taking this to the next level, you really need to start instilling habits that don't
Hmm.
demand your time that heavily. Like right now, you may have a little bit more time than you have the money, but you're already almost at a wash in terms of the overall cost if you were to just start with, say, the Prusa.
That's what I was gonna say. I think you kind of made the position really clear. You're talking for $120 more, again minus shipping and other things like that. You're getting another printer on top of the ones that you currently have, and it's already hopefully right quote better than
Yeah.
the ones you have. I mean, to me, the decision would be pretty clear. I would just opt for expanding my line by getting another printer and using my current lineup as that mechanism to do that upgrade instead of upgrading the current printers because you got time, you got all of the other costs associated with it, and then you still have the same number of printers, right?
Yeah.
Um, and there's nothing wrong in keeping a few of those and upgrading a few of those, right? Because maybe you got parts that you need that are bigger than Prusa can fit on, right?
Mhm.
And you
So
know,
yeah, that's the exact way I'm thinking about it. Is that maybe that I because the Prusa is coming out with the Prusa XL, which is a much
mhm.
larger printer with a larger build volume. So in comparing it to the
And
Mark
larger
III,
cost.
doesn't yeah, it has a much larger cost. With the
Yeah.
upgrade, does that make it closer to the XL versus the Mark III? And then that $150 no longer it's a much larger difference to get the XL versus these upgrades. I know they have
Certainly.
like a bunch of different features as well, but basic size and quality.
Yeah, and that's a tough one too because now you're talking about getting into like a brand new printer for even Prusa and stuff. So it's like
Mhm.
buying, the first model year of something too. From a
Yeah, it's
business
never
standpoint,
recommended.
I wouldn't recommend that. Now, I'm excited. Don't get me wrong. I'm really excited for the XL. I've got one on order and stuff like that. But
Same
think
here.
about the way, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but like the way that the flip side of this is like the way the military implements upgrades and stuff over time. Like it takes them an insane amount of time. Like there's still equipment running Windows 3.1 and stuff. Like there are all these like standards, like, and that exists for a reason, like because they are so committed to the amount of time and energy they've invested in getting the system to where they are. As a business owner, just to bring it back to your original question here, you need to start thinking about operating at scale and in an efficiency that you're not right now. And so the value of having a unified tool set that is more reliable and stuff will pay dividends a lot faster than you probably think it will. Um, there's also the Mark IV is supposedly coming out this year as well. But again, it's that's more of an iterative advance on the i3 platform. So, if you're thinking about when to make the investment and stuff like that, you might want to just hold out a little bit longer and see what happens there. But again, I think that value is really in just starting with a more reliable tool set, and you're already there in terms of the dollars for the expenditure.
Yeah. Well, and I would also kind of transition it back to the whole aspect why you kind of jumped on the call saying that you're kind of doing two jobs right now at the same
Yeah.
time, right? And
Yeah.
maybe it's time for you to start evaluating, do you take that leap and jump into doing your print business instead of your software engineering role. um
Is that your goal?
Things that
Sorry,
you're
just really quick. I mean,
yeah
is that
is
is that where you want to be?
Oh, I think everyone's dream is to work for themselves. During the beginning of 2020, I ended up losing one of my jobs, and so I got a taste of that kind of being your own. I wasn't able to do the
Mm-hmm.
numbers that I'm doing now, but like then I got the taste of like I wake up and it's kind of like I get paid by what I do. I am the one that makes my own paycheck at the end of the day, not
Very,
somebody else.
very rewarding. Where,
Yeah.
Mayhall, where are you located, if I might ask?
Oh, Rhode Island in the United States.
Ah, right on.
Awesome.
Okay, Rhode Island
Yeah.
got an East Coaster. Fantastic. Well, listen, obviously you must be doing something right. You've scaled it to the point you've got 23 printers and stuff like that. So you're on the path, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Andrew's point is spot on. If you want to stop feeling like you're doing both, like make sure you're doing whatever you can to, not add to the burden
Mm-hmm.
of the and I would argue like you're just gonna when you start going down that upgrade path, that tweak path, like we go to great ends to not touch the stock
Mm-hmm.
configuration of the Mark threes that we have, even
Mm-hmm.
though with one big exception right now, and that's Revo, and
That's what I
that's
was
a
gonna
whole
say.
but that's for another time.
Yep.
And it's a literally a drop in replacement. So it's
Yeah.
very, very minimal, but for very big reward in terms of the amount of printing that we do, where we're constantly trying to change nozzles. And so that is a big time savings and investment for us. And
Mm-hmm.
we're not having to look at other machines. But you're on the path. I think you already kind of knew in your head what you wanted to do. The other option for you might be, I will say that as XL comes out and as the Mark IV comes out, the Mark III Plus is a very, very capable and will continue to be a very capable platform
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. There is going to be a flood of them on the secondary market when that
Mm-hmm.
And
happens.
then
So you
pick them
might,
up like used off of eBay, or is there like liquidation sites?
yeah, there most certainly will be. I mean,
Yep.
there's probably a bunch of people on here that'll be like, "I'll sell you mine because I want to, get it." I've seen a ton of it. I've
Mm-hmm.
purchased some as well, and I think it'll continue to be a reliable workhorse. There's a reason that you see them on so many farms. It is by far, in my opinion, the best bang for your buck workhorse out there. Now, it's again not necessarily the right tool for every job,
Oh
but
yeah,
Uh-huh.
every print is different, so every
yeah,
printer's got to do a different job.
yeah. I want to thank you for calling in, man. That was a
Yeah.
fantastic question, and we wish you the best of luck. I love hearing other people,
Is it
right
possible
in
to
the mix there.
sneak in one more question?
Go for it.
Sure.
We're here
Does it
for you.
make more sense to hire an employee first, or does it make more sense
Mm-hmm.
to kind of do leave and then run it 100%?
So
That's an excellent
that is
question.
I love this question. It's such a good question that we actually have it on our list of topics for its like own
Yep.
episode.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
But we could I say we can tease it here because there's a lot of meat on that
Yeah.
bone. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on that, Andrew?
So I think it comes down, for one, it's a big personal decision, right? And I think you need to ask yourself what it is that you want, right? There are absolutely lifestyle, changes that you can make. And do you want the lifestyle more, or do you want to grow faster? In one capacity, right? If you were to hire an employee, and let's say you get the perfect employee, right? No employee is going to be
Good
perfect, but
luck.
let's hypothetical. Let's say you get the perfect employee. They don't need a ton of managing. They're go getter. They can basically operate the business that you would, right?
Hmm.
As you would. You have the potential to drastically scale your business faster because you're not taking your time. You're delegating, right?
Sure.
And you're still earning your living that you can then reinvest into the business, right?
Yep.
This is a very different type of role. You become a delegator, you become a CEO, an executive, right? On the other option, you become an operator where you take away from your current position. You now work in your business, but you're operating, you're doing the day-to-day work. Right now, it's going to be harder. You're going to have to grind. You're not going to have as much money. You're going to be more connected to that business. you can still grow, and you can still grow effectively and pretty quickly too. But it is a different choice. It's a different lifestyle. And I think you have to ask yourself which one you want, and just kind of start weighing some options there. Pooch, what do you have to say?
Yeah, well, I've been down this exact road, and I'm not going to say that my way. I don't even know if I would do it again the same way. But what happened for me was I hired first. Um, the One of the things that really resonates with me that I've read is as a CEO, and I don't like throwing the CEO title out there as a small startup because that's not really the same thing as what a true CEO is. But as the owner, the leader of the company and stuff, your job is building fire departments, not putting out fires, right? Like that's
Hmm.
really where you need to be getting towards. So the sooner that you accept that mentality, the the quicker you'll be able to scale. So I know it feels like, well, I want to be paying myself first. And so I should be employee number one and I have to do all the production and all the packaging and all that stuff. But given there are a finite number of hours in the day and the fact that um, even if you hire an employee, there's still going to be more for you to do than
Yeah.
you need. It's not like you're going to have nothing to do, right? Anyway, my argument was by having that person take, say, production for us. That was it. It was I need somebody to take production off of my hands as a first step because it was the easiest thing to train somebody else to do, to set guidelines for them to do a reasonably good job at. You're not going to find somebody that's going to be able to wear every single hat. So you need to come up with a digestible chunk. And it's also like one of the lower paid areas. So it's like for my investment, what is my best bang for my buck? If I can farm out the production so that I can work on better systems, better packaging. I was still very much in there doing a lot of the packaging myself, like because I needed to understand all of the things that I needed to give this person to do their job better. But once I freed myself up from that day to day burden, because when you were filling orders and shipping orders and all that stuff, like there will not be any time, like when you get to the scale where you need to be, if you're doing that job, you're not going to have any time to be doing all the other things that are going to allow you to like really get to a better earning potential and all that stuff as well. You need to be focused on the selling. um,
Hmm.
and that is a really really hard job I think to hire out for, and some may disagree with me, but like you're steering the ship, you're the one driving the orders in, and so you need to make sure you are able to be available for that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I,
That's
I've
my
been
advice.
doing a lot of optimizing anywhere I can to make it so I'm available for these things. Like, I
Good.
don't know if you guys have tried it, but I mean, I couldn't do without. I mean, the Amazon, and using their fulfilled by Amazon, I would
Been there.
just it'd be impossible without that because they handle the shipping and stuff like that and all the logistics on that end. So I
Yeah.
just
This is
essentially,
such a great thing because we here at Gloop, we go about things totally differently, right? And it's too much to go into right now, but maybe we should do this as like the next episode, Pooch, because
Yeah,
there are
no,
so
we
many good
we
things
should.
that we could, I could go in on that, we don't do particularly well, but I think in some capacity, it's helped us develop a better product and develop a better user experience, and now we're starting to make those transitions, right? I've been the operator of Gloop, like there's two Andrews and I'm the
Which
one
one are
full
you?
time.
The full-time one, okay.
I'm the full-time one, and I'm very much the operator, but also I wear every other hat as well, like, and it does take away.
Well,
Had we did it a little bit differently, right? I could have hired an employee and been the delegator, right? Been the guy working on the business, not in the business. But I
yeah.
think that in there's a lot of really cool things that I would love to share and dive in deeper. Why I think it's a benefit, and why there are some challenges still too.
Yeah. Yeah, and listen, especially we talk about how closely we came at we're makers, like that maker mentality. A lot of the time is like I want to be in there and doing it myself, and it is such a double edged sword in the sense that It allows us to be close to the product and understand what we're dealing with, but at the same time, you gotta let go.
Mm-hmm.
Because and I've had this conversation with Andrew, like he's still trying to back, because he does his own production still and all this stuff, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
a different thing. But you need to set yourself up to succeed. So if you're ever gonna get beyond feeling like I'm burning the candle at all ends, I think if you can afford to reward yourself a little bit, like I said, even if just like, and you can dip your toe in very easily, like what worked well for us, like we went down to the local junior college and partnered with like one of the mechatronics groups that was there, and just said like, hey, if anybody's looking for part-time, like it's a great part-time student job, because they get to say, I'm working with a 3D printing company. It's way more exciting than working down at McDonald's or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can you can still just feed however many hours and scale up and back. Students really appreciate the flexibility. So if it's not critical, like I need it this day, if you can do shipping on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there's any number of different ways where I think you can get a lot of bang for your buck and just kind of dip your toe in.
Yeah,
And
I think that's a great idea. Actually,
yeah.
I'll probably, because I just finished college 2 years ago, so I can
Okay.
just I'll go back, and then because I'll go to the CS department and just see if anybody's interested. I still know
Yeah.
all the professors, so I'm sure they'd be more than happy to help.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, use those relationships, man. That's super, super important. I hope you do that, and I think that you'll find it to be pretty rewarding. The flip side of that is like they are students, so at some point they're going to move on. But again, your
Oh, of
job then
course.
should be focusing on what the system is, and so whether it's Mike that comes in, or Elaine, or whoever, like that they can hopefully interchange and train pretty quickly to take a good amount off your plate for not a lot of expenditure, which is what you
Mm-hmm.
really, I think, need, so that you can feel that growth and that confidence and that spirit. And you'll be surprised, like it'll allow you to sell better and to progress more quickly, I think.
Yeah.
We will absolutely have to go more into that.
Yeah, you
And
guys
there's
don't have to tell all this time.
we got to hold something for next time. Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so
Yeah.
much for your call and your comment. And I'm glad our system worked. That was our first time
Yeah.
trying that. It
This
seemed to
worked out
work out
great.
well. Mahal, good luck. Best of luck to you, man. And tune in, and hopefully you can give us some updates down the road as we keep going here.
Thanks, guys. Looking
All
forward
right.
to it. Thank you again.
All right. Take care. Have a good day. All right, man. That was those were some great questions. I really love hearing what other people are doing too,
Yeah.
and remember exactly where I was in that kind of same period of time.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, I can't wait to share some of the things that, well, that I know we're doing wrong, but also some of the things that I think that we're doing right, and ways that we could probably do a little better. But
yeah,
I'm excited.
very
That
good.
would be a cool topic.
Well, my friend, we'll absolutely pin that for next time. I think this is a great point to wrap it up for the day. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thanks for all the great questions and comments. It's always great seeing you guys in here. I wish everybody the greatest of Fridays and weekends ahead of you, and best of luck with your ventures. If you need to get in touch with either of us, we're both very active on Twitter. Andrew's at 3D Gloop. I am at Repkord. And we will see you hopefully next Friday for the same thing. We like this time slot. So make a note if you're into this kind of content, or if you have feedback for us, feel free to leave commentary on the channel or tweet at us or whatever it is. If you have topics of conversation that you'd like to see us do, we're always looking for recommendations there as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my friend, and I wish a fine Friday and weekend to you as well. And I look forward to our next one. I will catch you next Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 Central for
Let's do it.
for our friends, and that's noon. So it's a nice
Yeah.
lunchtime interlude for our friends on the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
So look forward to the next one. Till then, Pooch Repcord signing off, and Gloop.